guys, so I wanted to talk about today some of the crazy or different positions that I was in to help me with a difficult labor that I had recently had. 6 months ago I had our third daughter and her labor was difficult. It was actually more the delivery part, the pushing her out, that was difficult, but it involved me getting into so many different positions. And it's funny because you learn a lot of different positions when you're preparing for birth, and you don't really anticipate having to use all of them, but you never know. So I wanted to share some of these techniques that I used and what finally worked for getting her out, and it might help you one day or give you some ideas too, or you might find yourself in a position like mine where you need to use them, or maybe you're just curious about the different ways that you can give birth, because you don't have to just give birth lying in the back with your feet up in little straps. So let's dive right in, you guys. So just to briefly sum up, so you can kind of get why we ended up having to do all these crazy positions. If you have not seen our birth story, I'm going to put the link here, and you should go watch that first. Really get an idea, okay? So you should watch that. I'm just going to go for it. So one of the positions I was in was basically, well, just to sum up real quick, is that my daughter had an incredibly, almost scary fast labor where my first contraction happened, my water broke just a little over an hour later, and I started feeling the urge to push within about 20 minutes or so. This is my third. I very much know that feeling. I knew when my water broke that I was in trouble, so to speak, because you usually, births can always be different, but I tend to be, with my other two, it's the same thing. My water doesn't break until I'm about ready to push. I knew when my water broke that, and then I very quickly started to feel the urge to push. Actually, my water broke, and I soon after, there's a little bit more to the story, but that's not for this video, but I started to feel the urge to push. So we had to take a car ride. I was actually delivering at a home, but not my home. So we had to get in the car to go to this other home I was basically having a home away from home birth. So on the way there, I was definitely feeling the urge to push, but things felt wrong. Things felt very wrong to me. I'm not going to get into it right now, but it was just very odd. I was like, So we get to the house, and I get out, and I have to walk in, and so definitely one of my, laboring positions is walking, as will probably be a lot of yours. So walking and feeling like I was going to push, they kind of were rushing me because they could tell that I was, that baby was coming. They were like, come on and get to the pool. So that goes to my next position, which was in water. And in the water, I had two basic positions. My favorite was hanging over the side of the birth pool, leaning over it. That felt really great to me, with my legs kind of open a little bit to help widen the area, and hanging on, and it gave me some place to grip. And I actually liked my husband outside of the birth pool because he could have his face right with me, and he had his arms. So that was one position. The other position was leaning back in the birth pool with my arms up, just kind of doing it that way. That also let the midwife be able to check me. It was around this time that we discovered that the baby's head was tipped. She's asynclitic, which just basically means that her head was tilted, and it was, instead of being in the birth canal the way it was supposed to be, it had gotten stuck, wedged in my pelvis. So every time I pushed, she was just getting wedged further into my pelvis instead of coming down the birth canal. And that is why that feeling I had that something was off, that was what it was. So my body was kind of involuntarily pushing, like I couldn't even stop it, but the baby was stuck. So we had to get creative. And luckily I had a very skilled and determined and awesome, knowledgeable birth team who was willing to work, and the baby was fine. We kept good watch on her, kept checking her heart rate and everything, and she was always fine. So that led us into trying more, varying birth techniques, if you will. So eventually we realized it wasn't working in the water. She was stuck, and we weren't getting her unstuck. So I got out of the water, which, let me tell you, fully dilated, feeling the urge to push, trying to get out of a birth pool and walking around is not a fun time, but so I did that. I got down, I did on my hands and knees, and we tried that. We tried using a rebozo, which is basically just a woven scarf. They're really long. They actually put it up under my stomach, And while I was on my hands and knees, they would pull and try to lift, basically get that baby to lift up and change her position. We did that for a while. Didn't really work, or if it did help a little, we couldn't tell. So we tried that for a while. I stood up. I went and I got basically upside down. Oh my goodness, let me tell you guys, getting upside down while you're in that position is just ridiculous. But I was like gonna try anything and everything. I mean, what can you do? Like, you're in labor, you gotta do something. So basically, they helped me a lot. They got me up, my hands were down on the ground, and my legs and my butt and my backside, everything was up on a couch. So I was up like this. We're basically trying to get the baby to basically come back up, get out of the birth canal part that she was in and come up a little bit, and then get her to her head to kind of go back into the birth canal the right way. That was the whole reasoning behind that. So we did that for a bit. So that was happening. Then, let's see, we moved on to, I got up, I walked over, did some more walking. We got me, I did some laboring on the bed, leaning over the bed. I did laboring leaning over a birthing ball. I leaned over a birthing ball standing up on the bed. I couldn't really squat very well. It was very, very, very painful for me to squat. So we didn't do a lot of that. Plus, since she was already wedged in, that wasn't necessarily like gonna work anyway. Ah!
There you go. Do it again. Good. Two more.
So that was that. We actually I did on my back, lying on my back, to try to basically have gravity, instead of gravity forcing her down when her head wasn't ready, it was like taking her off. So to try to get her to maybe like relax from the birth canal, get her head unstuck, and then go back into the birth canal the right way again. So that's why I laid down. I side lied, where I laid on my side and tried pushing that way. Did, I guess, more on the bed, leaning over the birthing ball, on the bed with Kyle. I did where I was on my back, but I was propped up either against Kyle or against one of the other midwives or a pillow. Then we got up, we walked around some more, then we decided to another midwife came in to help because we all knew this baby was stuck. So, and like I said, this whole time my baby was perfectly fine. We always checked her. It was just me that was dealing with it. Although, you know, I did feel bad for her with her little head stuck. That couldn't be fun, but her heart rate was always really good. So we got up, walked around, and one of the midwives says, hey, you know what? We've got nothing to lose. I've heard that when you go on car rides, it can actually help bump the baby into a better position. So they were all like, we need to try this. Do you want to try this? And I was like, because the car ride over had been excruciating, because I had been fighting the urge to push and trying not to push, and scared I was going to have that baby in the car, which I really might have if she hadn't been stuck. But the thought of getting back in a car was dreadful to me. But again, what are you going to do? I definitely did not want to have a C-section or go to a hospital. So we went out, we got into, I had to walk all the way to the car and had to stop along the way because my contractions were just relentless, y'all. They just kept on coming. So I make the funniest face when I was in labor too. I'm just like this basically. I'm like, like it's hilarious. It's this face. I'm just like not happy. But so we get in the car and I kind of lie on my side on my husband, and the midwife gets in the very back, and my birth photographer is in the front seat, passenger side, and one of the other midwives is driving. And they're driving around, and it's hilarious because one of the like my main midwife is like, you know, go around here, go over the railroad tracks. And I'm like, oh no. Go over the railroad tracks and bump and everything else. It's so funny in hindsight. At the time I was like, is this real life? Like, is this really happening? Really am I on a car ride going over railroad tracks trying to bump my baby into a better position? This has got to be the craziest birth position ever. Like literally in the car on purpose. Not because like I'm trying to rush to have the baby somewhere, but because we're trying to get the baby unstuck. It's so many people who watched the birth video were like, where were you guys driving to? And I'm like, nowhere, around the block apparently. So that was that. And then we came back, and y'all, that must have done the trick, because when we got back, I got back in that bed, and we were able to make progress. I really wanted a water birth at first, but I had no qualms about the fact that I didn't have a water birth. I'm completely at peace with that because it's so funny. A lot of times when you don't give birth at a hospital, one of the reasons is because you want to labor and deliver the way you'd like to, not just stuck on a bed on your back. But it ended up at the end of the day that was the best position for me to get my baby out, was that position that I had thought I did not want. So it's so funny how that worked out. But as soon as we got back and I started pushing, then she started to come down the birth canal finally. So there we go. There were some crazy positions, and I guess, none of them were like completely crazy. It was just not what I expected. Definitely were positions and things I would not have done if the baby had come down the birth canal the way she should have. And I will tell you guys that before the baby came, I practiced a lot of different movements that are supposed to help the baby be in the right position, and she still got stuck. So that can still happen, and so I think it was good. I learned a lot of these techniques, and I took these Bradley method classes, and you learn them, and I just thought I'd never use them. And not only did I end up using those techniques that I had learned, all of them, I also got to use things like the one class, I remember she taught us about how to control your breathing and work through the pain if you need to just stop pushing. And I raised my hand and I was like, why would you ever need to stop pushing? And she was like, well, if the baby's coming too fast, or they need you to slow down so you don't tear, if there's a problem, or the baby's position's funny, she was like, that might happen. And I was like, okay, and that happened to me. So I had to use that technique, and that technique they said it was like to try blowing out like a candle, like not pushing and just like kind of like you're blowing out a candle. You kind of focus doing your breath like that, and it helps you work through the pain and not push. And I used that technique. So along with some of those positions I never thought I would have used. So who would have thought? So anyway, if you have any questions or want any advice or any comment about any kind of crazy position that you've been in, or just if you have a question more about what I've talked about, ask down below, or share your own story about things that you might have done to help with your labor and delivery. Alright, bye guys.